Hey guys, today we're driving the 2022 Kia EV6. This is the Wind all-wheel drive, which basically just means it's the middle trim. It'll go 274 miles on a full charge. It makes 320 horsepower, 446 pound-feet of torque, 0 to 60 in under 5 seconds. Let's walk you around this new Kia EV6. This is my first time driving one of these cars. We've got a pretty funky looking interior and exterior, with still some pretty familiar physical controls all around, which I appreciate. Kia's usually pretty good about that. I've been driving this all week, so I'll give you guys some driving impressions and thoughts on what it's been like to live with. Let's start on the outside. Starting price on this trim is about $52,000. As tested, we're at $54 grand with a technology package. Pretty wild looking exterior design. Love the rear end taillights. Actually, this rear end has grown on me quite a bit. When it first came out, I thought it was a little bit too weird, too funky, but I don't know, this is very similar to the Hyundai Ioniq 5. Shares a lot of components, slightly different dimensions. The Kia EV6 is more aerodynamic and as a result gets slightly better range. But I think between the two vehicles, it's going to come down to availability and aesthetic preference for buyers. But this EV6 definitely has kind of a sleek, lowered crossover / taller wagon look to it. It's got a lot of interior volume. We have these flush door handles. Pretty spacious back seat with a flat floor. Check out these seat backs too. Very thin seats. Make for a little bit better rear legroom. This EV6 also has the Meridian surround sound system. We'll test that out at the end of the video. Plenty of legroom, knee room, space in the back. We also get a couple USB-C ports for the rear seat passengers. No rear climate control, but we do get a couple of vents back here and an armrest. I'm 5'10". This is me seated behind my own driving position. I have about an inch and a half of headroom above my head, seated all the way to the back. Let's open up the tailgate here. Plenty of cargo space in the back of this EV6. We have a slightly higher load floor, and then underneath this cover, you've got room for your tire mobility kit, charge cable, stuff like that. The rear seats can be folded down with these two levers back here, which is nice. I believe that's something that the Ioniq 5 cannot do from the rear hatch. My only complaint though, Kia does this in a couple of their models, when the rear seats fold down, they lock into place. I don't know why they need to lock into place. Gravity usually does a pretty good job with that. So you have to go to both sides, pull this handle up, and then bring the rear seats up. A little bit tedious if you're folding your rear seats up and down quite often. Looking at the front end, I like that we actually have some meat on these sidewalls. These are 19-inch wheels wrapped in 235/55 R19 tires. Kumho Krugen eco-oriented tires. Not a lot of grip, but they are pretty comfortable, pretty quiet. The front end on this EV6 is pretty wild. It's very short, very low, makes for excellent visibility out the front window. Almost has kind of a weird supercar look to it. I don't know, it's a very interesting design, very unique. I like that Kia is doing their own thing these days. They're kind of forging their own path instead of copying designs from others. I don't see any influence from any other vehicle that I've ever seen in this EV6. Back here on the rear passenger side, you've got your charge port. Just tap the door to open it. This has 800 volt charging architecture, so it can fast charge on a 350 kilowatt charger to about 10 to 80% in about 18 minutes, maybe a little bit less. It's super fast. You get about 180 miles in about 18 minutes. It's super, super quick charging if you can find a charger that works, if it's charging at 350 kilowatts, you know, all those things depend. The charging architecture is here, and this can also function as a mobile power generator where you can power your home appliances like refrigerators or laptops or devices. You can basically hook this up to your house and power things if you're in a power outage, which is pretty neat. You've got a battery indicator right here, and all you have to do to close the door is just press this. Really interesting rear taillight design. Got a little bit of a roof spoiler right here. No rear wiper. We do get a very small frunk. I'll show you that here briefly. It's basically only big enough to fit a user manual in. Yeah, there's not a lot of space there. Mostly this front compartment is filled with wiper fluid, coolant, the 12-volt battery, fuse boxes, all that stuff. All right, guys, well, this is a quick walk around of the EV6. Overall, a pretty functional, usable, interesting looking electric vehicle. One thing that is a little bit strange with these door handles, so this is the flush design. You got to kind of get used to opening it like this. But when you're locking and unlocking the car, you have to press in on this little divot. It won't just sense your hand. You have to press it to unlock it or press it to lock it. Something that I've had to get used to this week if you're not fond of using your key fob or taking it out of your pocket. Speaking of the key fob, here's what that looks like. You can use it to park in or park out the vehicle, which is kind of useful in some scenarios. And it has the detonator style that came from the Kia Stinger back in the day. All right, let's look at this interior. Very interesting looking 2-spoke steering wheel with Kia's new logo. Looks like K backwards N to me. I can't get that out of my head, but I guess it just does say Kia. You've got a drive mode selector right here. You can choose between Eco, Normal, and Sport. And you can see that also changes the gauge cluster design. A pretty simple gauge layout with a lot of simple menus. You can see your trip, your average miles per kilowatt hour, a compass, general information like power distribution or tire pressure. I've just been leaving it on this kind of driving assistance page that shows you your blind spot monitoring and lane keep assist, stuff like that. Over here to the left, you've got controls for your gauge cluster illumination, a button to pop the charging door, and a button to open up the trunk. You've also got a traction control off button, and the parking brake switches over here too. You can fully disable traction and stability control in this EV6 and rip some mad all-wheel drive donuts. Whew, it's fun. We're probably not going to be doing that in this video today though. Over here you have your climate control menu, which will also switch to your quick access controls and volume and tune knobs. So you've kind of got a dual screen layout here. This is very interesting. I guess it's a clever use of space. I like that they've kept physical knobs and dials here. You've got an option for driver-only climate control. You can set it to auto. Very straightforward, very simple. It's been easy to use this week. And then right below, you've got controls for your heated steering wheel, heated and ventilated seats. Down here, you've got a quick access button for your parking camera, which I found to be very useful this week. And then you've got this rotary shifter here that's pretty straightforward, pretty easy to use. Down here is wireless charging, a little bit more storage in this cubby, cup holders, all that good stuff. And then under this big slab, you've got a little hook here to hang a bag or something. You've got quite a bit of storage here. It's all aligned with this rubber grippy base that you can take out and wash. So that's neat. It's a little bit hard to access between the seats, but if you've got a bag and you just want to kind of throw it down there, it will keep it contained and it's not going to be rolling around the cabin too much, which I suppose is good. No sunroof in this EV6. Everything else is pretty straightforward. Standard controls, 2-seat memory settings, auto up-down windows for the front windows. We get Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, not wireless. I do have a wired connection today. This screen seems to be very responsive, pretty quick. There's no home button, but you can program these favorite buttons to kind of show you whatever you want. So I've got my steering wheel button programmed to take me to the home screen. So I'm using that as a home button. And then I've got this button programmed to take me to my phone projection. But there's all these options. I found these buttons to be pretty useful this week. If you swipe to the left, you've got this calm screen that shows you your day, time, battery percentage, range, all that good stuff. You can go into vehicle setup, and there are a ton of different options for vehicle customization. You can enable or disable safety settings, change drive modes. Oh, and this also has active sound design, which we'll test out here in a little bit. Okay, let's take this for a drive. There's an audible beep when you put this in reverse. We have all the active sound design turned off. So this is just electric motor sound that you're hearing right now. And you'll notice we also have paddle shifters behind the steering wheel that will control our level of regenerative braking. So we can either set it to 0, coast, 3, which is a decent amount of regen, or I-pedal, which is 1 pedal driving. That's mostly what I've been driving this EV6 in this week. And it's pretty quick. In normal mode, acceleration feels pretty natural, pretty linear. Eco mode definitely dulls the throttle down quite a bit and limits your max power output. You can see that reflected here on this power gauge. Sport mode, pretty snappy, pretty responsive. It'll let you have some fun. Let's show you guys what this active sound is like. So you have a bunch of different custom sounds. Let's start with stylish. Okay, here's dynamic. That's a fun one. And there are little descriptions here that describe the sound to you. Here's cyber. Very Jetsons. And then you can always do a custom sound, which you can configure yourself. There's a bunch of different options here in the menu for pedal response, master volume, and you can kind of select an EV sound style. We're, I think, just going to leave everything off for this video and make this as quiet as possible. That's kind of my preferred EV driving experience. Okay, off we go. So, how does this EV6 drive? It rides well, it's pretty comfortable, it's pretty straightforward. This isn't a challenging car to get into and use and operate. Some of the controls take a little bit to get used to. This dual screen setup was kind of the first thing that I thought was a little bit weird, but I've gotten used to this car and it's very easy to live with after spending all week with it. The one pedal driving is pretty well tuned. It feels very natural. There is plenty of power and acceleration from this dual motor all-wheel drive setup. Try sport mode here. On power, there's even a decent amount of rotation on throttle. These eco tires definitely like to complain. But after a little bit of initial body roll, this seems to handle pretty well. It's not as heavy as some other EVs on the market, which is kind of cool. It's only about 4,500 pounds, which is about 500 pounds lighter than the Ford Mustang Mach-E. Let's switch back into normal mode here. We also get Highway Driving Assist 2, which is an updated system. It'll automatically lane change for us. It keeps us pretty well centered between the lines on straight sections of highway. Once it senses some curves, it'll ask you to take over a little bit quicker. But I found it to be a pretty nice system to use this week. You can enable or disable steering assist pretty quickly with this button on the steering wheel. Quickly change following distance settings. It's all pretty straightforward. It seems to work well enough. And of course, there's more customization that you can go into the settings and set to your preferences too. You can enable it to always activate the steering assist whenever you enable cruise control or not. At speed, wind noise is kept at bay. I think this is a pretty quiet EV to drive. Not a ton of rattles in this cabin. And there's just a little bit of electric motor whine. Overall, it's a pretty quiet driving experience. The steering's a little bit interesting. There's a very strong return to center, so it has this kind of springy feel to it. The steering is pretty isolated. There's definitely not a lot of feedback. I think it suits the character of the car well, though. I haven't done any range tests with this week, but I would say 274 miles out of this EV6 in all-wheel drive form is probably pretty accurate. This also has a heat pump, and that will help a lot with cold weather range. Instead of about a 30% reduction in range in cold temperatures, you'll see about a 15-16% reduction, which definitely makes a big improvement. The heat pumps are standard on all-wheel drive Kia EV6s. Steering on the highway is a little bit on the heavy side. It took some getting used to this week, but after living with it, it doesn't really bother me anymore. Honestly, it handles pretty well. I doubt anyone is going to be pushing and hustling their EV6 around corners like journalists do, but in a pinch, it's a pretty well-tuned suspension setup. It's very nicely calibrated for good ride quality, but it also handles pretty well too. It's very neutral, not a ton of understeer. The all-wheel drive system seems to do a pretty good job getting you out of corners. Haven't tested this too much in slippery conditions. I think the stability control would chatter away at you a little bit if you were really trying to hustle this on a back road in the wet or in the snow. But again, you can completely turn everything off if you want to hoon around a little bit. Let's go back into eco mode. Eco mode is a very chill drive mode. Normal and sport can be a little bit jerky with one pedal driving sometimes, but eco mode just smooths everything out. I've got to say, I've really enjoyed living with this Kia EV6 this week. There's nothing revolutionary here. It's just an easy electric vehicle to live with on the day-to-day basis. I do like how it features an onboard power generator where you can reverse the electric flow and charge devices or power appliances if you have a power outage or something like that. That would be useful, and I think all electric vehicles need to incorporate that function at some point. Kia's done a nice job here blending a fresh, modern design with, I think, just traditional car functionality. They haven't gone full Tesla screen, which I think is great. We do have a couple nice looking displays in this EV6. They're high res, they're beautifully colored, very sharp and easy to read. They've done a really nice job with that. So that makes it feel modern and current and up to date. But at the same time, we have lots of physical controls, and that makes this car just that much easier to use and live with on a daily basis. Overall, I've got to give pretty high marks to this Kia EV6. This has been a very nice car to drive on a daily basis this week. No major complaints about this thing. I think ultimately, if you're comparing the EV6 and the Ioniq 5, it comes down to personal preference, design, availability. I know the Ioniq 5 is not sold in Michigan yet, so the EV6 is kind of our only option from that front, unless if I want to go to another state like Indiana and shop for one. I also haven't driven an Ioniq 5, so I can't really tell you how these two cars compare. I'm sure down the road I will get a chance to get behind the wheel of an Ioniq 5. Personally, I kind of prefer the Ioniq's looks, but this EV6 has definitely grown on me. There's some interesting shapes and proportions with this car that make it look and feel a little bit more exotic, I think. It's an interesting design language. This does sit on Kia's all-new global architecture eGMP, so this is a ground-up electric vehicle. They're going to be incorporating a bunch of other electric models that sit on this architecture. Basically, it's just a skateboard platform. So we'll be seeing a lot more EV models coming from Kia in the near future. As far as packaging goes, though, this is a pretty ideal setup. They're calling it a crossover SUV. To me, it just looks like a kind of a big wagon. And I think that's pretty ideal for an all-around car. All right, guys, so those are some final thoughts. Let's walk you around this one more time, show you what it looks like from the outside, and then we'll go in and test the Meridian sound system. I guess I can show you the park in, park out feature. All right, so we're gonna lock it, hold, the vehicle's on, and just hold the reverse button, and you can ghost ride the whip. You could take your EV6 for a walk. And no, you can't run yourself over. Yeah, it'll stop. Maybe a little bit of a gimmick. I could maybe see some scenarios where this would be useful. It looks like it's centering itself in the parking space. Didn't do a very good job. Not really sure why it did that, actually. So, might be a little bit unpredictable, but that's okay. All right, let's go test the sound system. Okay, I think we just get in and go, and we're off. Nice. Okay, so we'll go into our music app. We can switch to our volume knob down here. All of your volume and track controls are on the right side of the steering wheel. I've got to say, I am actually not impressed with this Meridian sound system. It's just a little bit dull and flat and lifeless. There's not a lot of bass. It's kind of grainy. I was expecting a little bit better from Kia. They've done much better in the past. I guess it's okay for a $50,000 car, but again, a bit of a disappointment. Kind of one of the few things that's really lacking in this car. So, not a huge deal. I think it's passable, and you can always go in and make some more adjustments and slightly improve it that way. But compared to, the B&O and the Mach-E, or even the sound system in the Tesla Model Y, it definitely falls short. One thing we didn't talk about are brakes. So let's just put this in coast mode. Brake pedal's a little bit squishy, but it feels pretty normal. it matches the inputs of all the other controls in this car. A little bit distant, a little bit isolated. Braking performance is good too. ABS system's pretty loud, but again, I've barely touched the brake pedal all week. It's nice to know that they do work well though. All right, traction, stability control off. Let's throw a couple corners at this EV6. Little roundabout. Even at low speeds, does a nice job getting around a corner. Look at that. Yeah, you can hustle this. It's all a bit soft and squishy and distant, but just the sheer responsiveness of everything and the fact that it's an EV makes it fun. And I cannot wait to get my hands on one of these in the winter and see how it does on a set of snow tires. I think it'd be pretty fun. Quick acceleration. There's just a softness to everything about this EV6. It really, there's never any harsh impacts. It just kind of smooths over all the bumps in the road, and it's a comfortable car to drive. Okay guys, that's it for this one. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video. Take care.